Welcome back to the program. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is under increasing pressure to recognise a Palestinian state. He played down suggestions that Australia might follow the lead of French President Emmanuel Macron, who said he'll formally recognise a Palestinian state at the next UN General Assembly meeting in September.
Look, what we will do is we'll make a decision based upon the time. Is the time right now? Are we about to imminently do that? No, we are not.
But at the General Assembly?
Are we about to do that? No, we are not.
Joining me now is the Australian's foreign editor, Greg Sheridan. Greg, thanks for your time tonight. There's no doubt Albanese wants to recognise a Palestinian state. Ed Husic came out today, former Labor minister, urging Albanese to do it immediately. How do you read the current situation and what factors will be driving the PM's decision?
Well, James, I think you have to view this all through the lens of domestic politics and especially managing the left and managing the Labor Party, and also the current worry that the government has of not having another bit of trouble with the Trump administration. I think recognising a Palestinian state would be a mistake because actually the PM spoke a lot of sense on that Sunday interview. This was the best I've seen the PM for a long time. He says, how can you guarantee that a Palestinian state won't threaten Israel, that Hamas will have no role, that there's a satisfactory peace process going? Well, absolutely right, PM. All of those things mean that you can only recognise a Palestinian state when one comes into existence at the end of a long, genuine negotiation with Israel. There's absolutely no chance of such a negotiation anytime soon. Therefore, it's a kind of nonsensical proposition. It's just gesture. And the PM said we won't do just gesture. But the problem with this government is that what it says on Monday bears no relation to what it says on Tuesday, and that bears no relation to what it says on Wednesday. I think, though, the shorthand is he'd want to see Trump before he does it, and he'll probably do it when Keir Starmer does it. We'll shelter under the skirts of Great Britain and say, well, look, if Great Britain can do it, we'll do it too. It won't make any contribution to peace in the Middle East. It just serves to demonise Israel a bit. It's a useless proposition, really.
I was fascinated to read today that Taiwan has requested to be involved in any future military exercises with Australia and our allies amid fears of an invasion from China. Taiwan's Deputy Minister for Mainland Affairs confirmed the request, saying, "We hope Taiwan can have the opportunity to participate in the joint military drills of the US, Australia, Philippines and Japan, even as an observer. This participation will be valuable." Greg, a couple of questions. Should Australia accept this request, and how can the PM accept this request if he should, having just returned from China where he's very, very cosy with Xi Jinping, who I don't expect would be very happy about this?
Look, James, to be honest with you, I probably don't think he should accept this request. In any event, it would be something which all the participating nations would have to agree with, the United States especially, but also Japan and the Philippines. In a sense, the imperative for both Taiwan and for Australia is not to get a visitor's card at somebody else's exercises. It's actually to beef up their own defence capabilities. I mean, Taiwan itself has only in the last few years started to really beef up its own defence capabilities to make itself a porcupine, very difficult for China to swallow. And Australia's defence spending, of course, is utterly pathetic, 2% of GDP, much of that money wasted. We can barely sustain the weapons we've got, and the surface fleet we have is the oldest and most decrepit we've ever had since World War II, and on and on and on. You can't even send the ships to sea most of the time because you can't crew them, you can't sustain them, you haven't got fuel for them. So, I mean, the high-blown diplomacy, I mean, Richard Marles in particular loves taking salutes from foreign militaries and attending conferences and all the rest, but we need to get some firepower. That's doesn't matter who we exercise with. Have we got anything that goes bang in the night, that, you know, puts a warhead on a target that goes bang? And at the moment, we've got very, very little of that.
The Australian and UK officials, you mentioned Richard Marles, they met last week and agreed to a 50-year treaty to ensure the AUKUS Pact remains in place. That, of course, comes amid a United States review of the whole deal. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy and Defence Secretary John Healey also reaffirmed their commitment to the Indo-Pacific region, saying they'll always stand as the closest of allies with Australia. How significant is that 50-year treaty?
Look, it's a bit hard to interpret, honestly. I mean, one line of interpretation would be that it's really a kind of a message to Trump and a lifeboat if Trump sinks the sale of Virginias to Australia. I just cannot see how America can sell any Virginias to Australia. They're making 1.1 a year. They need to be making 2.3 a year to have any to sell to Australia. It takes 7 years to build a nuclear submarine, so we know how many they're going to have in 2031 when they're supposed to make the decision on selling the first one to Australia. I mean, the mathematics, the arithmetic just seems to me abundantly obvious that it just can't work. I'd love it to work, but I don't see how it possibly can work. So this is probably a way of saying, well, if you don't do that, we'll still go ahead with the Brits. Now, the Albanese government, like the Morrison government before it, might quite like that because that means we won't be building any subs until the 2040s or probably the 2050s. So it's all becomes a kind of a fantasy land prospect. Having said all that, the relationship with the Brits is tremendously important, tremendously important. It's one of our most intimate relationships. Britain remains a very important power. It's the 6th largest economy in the world. It's got a permanent veto on the United Nations Security Council. It is the biggest military power in Western Europe, and we are brothers with Britain. So that relationship is very important. But we ought to be realistic. Britain is not going to play a big role in Indo-Pacific security. It would help. If we were in trouble, it would help. But the help would be quite marginal. Once again, James, it comes back to this. There's only one ally that really counts for us militarily, and that's the United States. And there's only one country whose behaviour we can actually determine, and that's our own behaviour. So, you know, it's great that the British Defence and Foreign Secretaries are here. They're very, very welcome visitors. But if the Albanese government was remotely serious, and the Morrison and previous coalition governments were no better, they would be on a big path of acquiring independent military capability for ourselves. Taiwan's not going to defend us. Britain is not going to defend us. The Americans probably will defend us, but we shouldn't rely always on America doing everything for us. Psychologically, we are the equivalent of the Afghan government before the fall of Kabul. We just think the Americans will always be there and they'll always take care of it, and that's not good enough.
Greg Sheridan, always appreciate your insights. Thanks for being with me tonight.